I remember thinking it's passing strange that the White House, I mean, that the president's lawyer, he was White House counsel, would be offering testimony.
The conversation then turned back to a question from the president regarding the money that was being paid the defendants. He asked me how this was done. I told him I didn't know much about it other than the fact that the money was laundered so it could not be traced, and then there were secret deliveries.
How come this man's here? What's he up to? How come he never told anybody about this stuff beforehand? Why didn't he come to the Republican side and tell us instead of going to the Democrats and telling them?
I had difficulty getting over the notion that this was the president's lawyer testifying against him. So I wondered about that, why he would do that, and what his motivations were, and all of that. So I think I proceeded with an open mind, but a skeptical mind. I certainly didn't assume that everything that he was saying in all that detail was the gospel truth.
And people in the nation were beginning to take sides. Is this young upstart, John Dean, who was just fired on April 30th, only 2 months before, trying to get back at the great man? Or is the great man really in trouble here?
I began by telling the president that there was a cancer growing on the presidency, and if the cancer was not removed, the president himself would be killed by it.
This thing that was holding everyone spellbound, people were missing airplanes at the airport. They were looking at TVs in store windows, in the barber shop. This thing was amazing, John Dean's testimony. That's when I really started thinking heavily about the tapes. And I'm saying, yes, John, that's right, or no, John, that's not quite right, but you're close. And I thought to myself, there are those tapes there. You know, it's a good thing that they're a secret.
The president almost from the outset began asking me a number of leading questions, which was somewhat unlike his normal conversational relationships I'd had with him, which made me think that the conversation was being taped and a record was being made to protect himself.
Now, Dean had told me that one of the meetings he had with the president, they were talking about paying off Mr. Hunt and Mr. Liddy to keep their mouths shut. And he said the president got up and walked over to a bookcase and whispered, "I guess we made a mistake paying off the burglars." And Dean said he asked himself, why is the president whispering in the book? And then he said to me, I thought maybe he was recording this conversation and didn't want that part to get on the tape. I said, tape? Recording? That would be the very corroboration we need with your testimony. If we had an ear witness, better than an eyewitness in this case, an ear witness to your conversations with the president, then I think we have the case. And that's when we started to look for the tapes.
Now, not only wasn't there a feeling there among some White House officials that every person who was not backing their efforts to re-elect the president, or who descended from the programs of the president, was an enemy?
They were putting journalists and other political people, or people who were very prominent in America, who were giving constructive dissent, on the enemies list. And being on the enemies list was not just being on a list. That meant that the IRS was set loose to audit your books. That meant that that articles that would destroy your reputation was leaked into the newspapers. There was an effort to destroy people who disagreed with the president.
So we have here plans to violate the Fourth Amendment, which were approved by the president, according to Mr. Haldeman. We have people being branded enemies whose mere offense is that they believed in enforcing the First Amendment as proclaimed by the Supreme Court of the United States just about a week ago.
That is correct.
Yes.
I'm just surprised that anybody would be deemed an enemy. I mean, just the term enemy, I think, gives you an idea of the mentality of Richard Nixon. I mean, how do you get there in the United States of America? Opponent, I understand that word. Somebody that disagrees with me, I understand that. Somebody that doesn't like me, I understand. enemy? That's pretty tough language.
It was my particular concern with the fact that the president did not seem to understand the implications of what was going on.
After 4 days of testimony, it was still Dean's credibility against the president's.
I think I'll ask Dean the focusing question, the framing question: what did the president know and when did he know it? Because after all, it's the president's involvement or lack of involvement that we're looking for. We need to know as best we can what he knew, and just as important, we need to know when he found out about it.
It occurs to me that at this point, that the central question at this point is simply put: what did the president know, and when did he know it?
It was very clear to me when Howard Baker started asking these questions and repeatedly, what did the president know and when did he know it, that he was doing this sort of in a very friendly, jury-friendly way, if you will, where it didn't appear to be badgering me. But what he was really trying to do was press and push me to be much more specific in my recitation of facts. And you've got to remember, I'm a fellow that believes he's been taped. I don't know how many conversations. I know of one very clearly. Also know that memory is never perfect. And he's trying, which is effective for a cross-examination, to show the weakness of the witness, that these things aren't crystal clear. But I knew exactly what he was doing in trying to pin me down. He was protecting the White House.
Mr. Dean, let me ask you a few questions about your actions after the Watergate incident. And by asking questions about your own personal involvement, I hope I'm not considered to be badgering you in any way, but I'm sure you realize, as one lawyer to another, that your actions and motivations are very relevant.
In fact, if I were still at the White House, I'd probably be feeding you the questions to ask the person who's sitting here.
Well, Mr. Dean, if I were here as I am, I would respond as I have responded, that I don't need any questions to be fed to me from anybody.
Under tough questioning, Dean stuck to his key accusation, that the president was involved.